The monument to Van der Werf in Hooglandse Kerk was not accessible that day, but the boys spent a few pleasant moments in the town hall, a long, irregular structure, somewhat in Gothic style, uncouth in architecture, but picturesque from age. Its little steeple, tuneful with bells, seemed to have been borrowed from some other building and hastily clapped on as a finishing touch. Ascending the grand staircase, the boys soon found themselves in a rather gloomy apartment, containing the masterpiece of Lucas van Leyden, or Huygens, a Dutch artist born 370 years ago, who painted well when he was 10 years of age and became distinguished in art when only 15. The picture called The Last Judgment, considering the remote age in which it was painted, is truly a remarkable production. The boys, however, were less interested in tracing out the merits of the work than they were in the fact of its being a triptych, that is, painted on three divisions. The outer ones swung on hinges so as to close, when required, over the main portion. The historical pictures by Harold de Moor and other famous Dutch artists interested them for a while, and Ben had to almost pull away from the dingy old portrait of Van der Werf. The town hall, as well as the Egyptian Museum, is on the Breedstraat, the longest and finest street in Leiden. It has no canal running through it, and the houses, painted in every variety of color, have a picturesque effect as they stand with their gable ends to the street. Some are very tall, with half of their height in their step-like roofs. Others crouch before the public edifice and churches. Being clean, spacious, well-shaded, and adorned with many elegant mansions, it compares favorably with the finer portions of Amsterdam. It is kept scrupulously neat. Many of the gutters are covered with boards that open like trap doors, and it is supplied with pumps surmounted with shining brass ornaments kept scoured and bright at the public cost. The city is intersected by numerous water roads formed by the river Rhine. There, grown sluggish, fatigued by its long travel, but more than 150 stone bridges reunite the dissevered streets. The same world-renowned river, degraded from the beautiful free-flowing Rhine, serves as a moat around the rampart that surrounds Leiden, and is crossed by drawbridges at the imposing gateways that give access to the city. Fine, broad promenades, shaded by noble trees, border the canals and add to the retired appearance of the houses behind, heightening the effect of scholastic seclusion that seems to pervade the place. Ben, as he scanned the buildings of Rottenburg Canal, was somewhat disappointed in the appearance of the great University of Leiden. And when he recalled its history, how, attended with all pomp of grand civic display, it had been founded by the Prince of Orange as a tribute to the citizens for the bravery displayed during the siege, when he remembered the great men in religion, learning, and science who had once studied there, and thought of the hundreds of students now sharing the benefits of its classes and its valuable scientific museums, he was quite willing to forego architectural beauty, though he could not help feeling that no amount of it could have been misplaced on such an institution. Peter and Jacob regarded the building with even a deeper, more practical interest, for they were to enter it as students in the course of a few months. Poor Don Quixote would have run a hopeless tilt in this part of the world, said Ben, after Lambert had been pointing out some of the oddities and beauties of the suburbs. It's all windmills. You remember his terrific contest with one, I suppose? No, said Lambert bluntly. Well, I don't either. That is, not definitely, but there was something of that kind in his adventures, and if there wasn't, there should have been. Look at them, how frantically they whirl with their great arms. Just the thing to excite the crazy knight to mortal combat. It bewilders one to look at them. Help me to count all those we can see, Van Moonen. I want a big item for my notebook. And after careful reckoning, superintended by all the party, Master Ben wrote in pencil, Saw, December 1840, 98 windmills within full view of Leyden. He would have been glad to visit the old brick mill in which the painter Rembrandt was born, but he abandoned the project upon learning that it would take them out of their way. Few boys as hungry as Ben was by this time would hesitate long between Rembrandt's home a mile off and Tiffin close by. Ben chose the latter. After Tiffin, they rested a while and then took another, which, for form's sake, they called dinner. After dinner, the boys sat warming themselves at the inn, all but Peter, who occupied the time in another fruitless search for Dr. Boekman. This over, the party once more prepared for skating. They were 13 miles from The Hague, and not as fresh as when they had left Broek early on the previous day, but they were in good spirits, and the ice was excellent. As the boys skated onward, they saw a number of fine country seats, all decorated and surrounded according to the Duchess of Dutch taste, but impressive to look upon, with their great formal houses, elaborate gardens, square hedges, and wide ditches, some crossed by a bridge, having a gate in the middle to be carefully locked at night. These ditches, everywhere traversing the landscape, had long ago lost their summer film, and now shone under the sunlight like trailing ribbons of glass. The boys traveled bravely, all the while performing the surprising feat of producing gingerbread from their pockets and causing it to vanish instantly. 12 miles were passed. A few more long strokes would take them to The Hague, when Van Moonen proposed that they should vary their course by walking into the city through the Bosch. "Agreed!" cried one and all, and their skates were off in a twinkling. The Bosch is a grand park or wood, nearly 2 miles long, containing the celebrated House in the Wood, Huis in Bosch, sometimes used as a royal residence. This building, though plain outside for a palace, is elegantly furnished within and finely frescoed. That is, the walls and ceilings are covered with groups and designs painted directly upon them while the plaster was fresh. Some of the rooms are tapestried with Chinese silk, beautifully embroidered. One contains a number of family portraits, among them a group of royal children who in time were orphaned by a certain axe which figures very frequently in European history. These children were painted many times by the Dutch artist Van Dyck, who was court painter to their father, Charles I of England. Beautiful children they were. What a deal of trouble the English nation would have been spared had they been as perfect in heart and soul as they were in form. The park surrounding the palace is charming, especially in summer, for flowers and birds make it bright as fairyland. Long rows of magnificent oaks rear their proud heads, conscious that no profaning hand will ever bring them low. In fact, the wood has for ages been held as an almost sacred spot. Children are never allowed to meddle with the smallest twig. The axe of the woodman has never resounded there. Even war and riot passed it reverently, pausing for a moment in their devastating way. Philip of Spain, when he ordered Dutchmen to be mowed down by hundreds, issued a mandate that not a bough of the beautiful wood should be touched. And once, when in a time of great necessity the state was about to sacrifice it to assist in filling a nearly exhausted treasury, the people rushed to the rescue and nobly contributed the required amount rather than the Bosch should fall. What wonder, then, that the oaks have a grand, fearless air? Birds from all Holland have told them how elsewhere trees are cropped and bobbed into shape. but they are untouched. Year after year, they expand in unclipped luxuriance and beauty. Their wide-spreading foliage, alive with song, casts a cool shadow over lawn and pathway, or bows to its image in the sunny ponds. Meanwhile, as if to reward the citizens for allowing her to have her way for once, nature departs from the invariable level, wearing gracefully the ornaments that had been reverently bestowed upon her. So the lawn slopes in a velvety green. The paths wind in and out. Flower beds glow and send forth perfume, and ponds and sky look at each other in mutual admiration. Even on that winter day, the Bosch was beautiful. Its trees were bare, but beneath them still lay the ponds, every ripple smoothed into glass. The blue sky was bright overhead, and as it looked down through the thicket of boughs, it saw another blue sky, not nearly so bright, looking up from the dim thicket under the ice. Never had the sunset appeared more beautiful to Peter than when he saw it exchanging farewell glances with the windows and shining roofs of the city before him. Never had the Hague itself seemed more inviting. He was no longer Peter von Hope, going to visit a great city, or a fine young gentleman bent on sightseeing. He was a knight, an adventurer, travel-soiled and weary, a hop-o'-my-thumb grown large, a Fortunatus approaching the enchanted castle where luxury and ease awaited him, for his own sister's house was not a half a mile away. "At last, boys," he cried, "we may hope for a royal resting place, good beds, warm rooms, and something fit to eat. I never realized before what a luxury such things are. Our lodgings at the Red Lion have made us appreciate our own homes." Well might Peter feel that his sister's house was like an enchanted castle. Large and elegant as it was, a spell of quiet hung over it. The very lion crouching at its gate seemed to have turned into stone through magic. Within, it was guarded by genii, in the shape of red-faced servants, who sprang silently forth at the summons of a bell or a knocker. There was a cat also, who appeared as knowing as any puss in the boots, and a brass gnome in the hall, whose business it was to stand with outstretched arms, ready to receive sticks and umbrellas. Safe within the walls bloomed a garden of delight, where the flowers firmly believed it was summer, and a sparkling fountain was laughing merrily to itself because Jack Frost could not find it. There was a sleeping beauty, too, just at the time of the boy's arrival. But when Peter, like a true prince, flew lightly up the stairs and kissed her eyelids, the enchantment was broken. The princess became his own good sister, and the fairy castle just one of the finest, most comfortable houses of the Hague. As may well be believed, the boys received the heartiest of welcomes. After they had conversed a while with their lively hostess, one of the genii summoned them to a grand repast in the red-curtained room, where floor and ceiling shone like polished ivory, and the mirrors suddenly blossomed into rosy-cheeked boys as far as the eye could reach. They had caviar now, and salmongundi, and sausage, and cheese, besides salad, and fruit, and biscuit, and cake. How the boys could partake of such a medley was a mystery to Ben, for the salad was sour, and the cake was sweet. The fruit was dainty, and the salmagundi heavy with onions and fish. But while he was wondering, he made a hearty meal, and was soon absorbed in deciding which he really preferred, the coffee or something else. It was delightful, too, this taking one's food from dishes of frosted silver and liquor glasses from which Titania herself might have sipped. The young gentleman afterward wrote to his mother that, pretty and choice as things were at home, he had never known what cut glass, china, and silver services were until he visited The Hague. Of course, Peter's sister soon heard of all the boys' adventures, how they had skated over 40 miles and had seen rare sights on the way, how they had lost their purse and found it again, how one of the party had fallen and given them an excuse for a grand sail in an ice boat, how, above all, they had caught a robber, and so for a second time saved their slippery purse. "And now, Peter," said the lady, when the story was finished, "you must write at once to tell the good people of Broek that your adventures have reached their height, that you and your fellow travelers have all been taken prisoners." The boys looked startled. "Indeed, I shall do no such thing," laughed Peter. "We must leave tomorrow at noon." But the sister had already decided differently, and a Holland lady is not so easily turned from her purpose. In short, she held forth such strong temptations, and was so bright and cheerful, and said so many coaxing and unanswerable things in both English and Dutch, that the boys were all delighted when it was settled that they should remain at The Hague for at least 2 days. Next, the grand skating race was talked over. Mevrouw van Ghent gladly promised to be present on the occasion. "I shall witness your triumph, Peter," she said, "for you are the fastest skater I ever knew." Peter blushed and gave a slight cough as Karl answered for him. "Ah, Mevrouw, he is swift, but all the Broek boys are fine skaters, even the ragpickers." And he thought bitterly of poor Hans. The lady laughed. "That will make the race all the more exciting," she said. "But I shall wish each of you to be the winner." At this moment her husband, Mynheer van Ghent, came in, and the enchantment falling upon the boys was complete. The invisible fairies of the household at once clustered about them, whispering that Jasper van Ghent had a heart as young and fresh as their own, and if he loved anything in this world more than industry, it was sunshine and frolic. They hinted also something about his having a heart full of love and a head full of wisdom, and finally gave the boys to understand that when Mynheer said a thing, he meant it. Therefore his frank, "Well, now, this is pleasant," as he shook hands with them all, made the boys feel quite at home and as happy as squirrels. There were fine paintings in the drawing-room, and exquisite statuary, and portfolios filled with rare Dutch engravings, besides many beautiful and curious things from China and Japan. The boys felt that it would require a month to examine all the treasures of the apartment. Ben noticed with pleasure English books lying upon the table. He saw also over the carved upright piano life-sized portraits of William of Orange and his English queen, a sight that for a time brought England and Holland side by side in his heart. William and Mary have left a halo around the English throne to this day. He the truest patriot that ever served an adopted country, she the noblest wife that ever sat upon a British throne, up to the time of Victoria and Albert the Good. As Ben looked at the pictures, he remembered accounts that he had read of King William's visit to The Hague in the winter of 1691. He who sang the Battle of Ivory had not yet told the glowing story of that day, but Ben knew enough of it to fancy that he could almost hear the shouts of the delighted populace as he looked from the portraits to the street, which at this moment was aglow with a bonfire, kindled in a neighboring square. That royal visit was one never to be forgotten. For 2 years, William of Orange had been monarch of a foreign land, his head working faithfully for England, but his whole heart yearning for Holland. Now, when he sought its shores once more, the entire nation bade him welcome. Multitudes flocked to The Hague to meet him. Many thousands came sliding or skating along the frozen canals from Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Leiden, Haarlem, and Delft. All day long the festivities of the capital were kept up. The streets were gorgeous with banners, evergreen arches, trophies, and mottos of welcome and emblems of industry. William saw the deeds of his ancestors and scenes of his own past life depicted on banners and tapestries along the streets. At night, superb fireworks were displayed upon the ice. Its glassy surface was like a mirror. Sparkling fountains of light sprang up from below to meet the glittering cascades leaping upon it. Then a feathery fire of crimson and green shook millions of rubies and emeralds into the ruddy depths of the ice. All this time, the people were shouting, "God bless William of Orange! Long live the king!" They were half mad with joy and enthusiasm. William, their own prince, their stadtholder, had become the ruler of 3 kingdoms. He had been victorious in council and in war, and now, in his hour of greatest triumph, had come as a simple guest to visit them. The king heard their shouts with a beating heart. It is a great thing to be beloved by one's own country. His English courtiers complimented him upon his reception. "Yes," said he, "but the shouting is nothing to what it would have been if Mary had been with me." While Ben was looking at the portraits, Mynheer van Ghent was giving the boys an account of a recent visit to Antwerp. As it was the birthplace of Quentin Matsys, the blacksmith, who for love of an artist's daughter studied until he became a great painter, the boys asked their host if he had seen any of Matsys' works. "Yes, indeed," he replied, "and excellent they are. His famous triptych in a chapel of the Antwerp Cathedral, with the descent from the cross on the center panel, is especially fine. But I confess, I was more interested in his well." "What well, Mynheer?" asked Ludwig. "One in the center of the city, near this same cathedral, whose lofty steeple is of such delicate workmanship that the French emperor said it reminded him of Mechlin lace. The well is covered with a Gothic canopy, surmounted by a figure of a knight in full armor. It is all of metal, and proves that Matsys was an artist at the forge as well as at the easel. Indeed, his great fame is mainly derived from his miraculous skill as an artificer in iron." Next, Mynheer showed the boys some exquisite Berlin castings, which he had purchased at Antwerp. They were iron jewelry and very delicate, beautiful medallions designed from rare paintings, bordered with fine tracery and open work, worthy, he said, of being worn by the fairest lady of the land. Consequently, the necklace was handed with a bow and a smile to Mevrouw van Ghent. Something in the lady's aspect as she bent her bright young face over the gift caused Mynheer to add earnestly, "I can read your thoughts, sweetheart." She looked up in a playful defiance. "Ah, now I am sure of them. You were thinking of those noble-hearted women, but for whom Prussia might have fallen. I know it, by that proud light in your eye."